From obscure supervillains to hints of unexpected tragedy, Superman promises to be a deep dive into comics lore, and the teaser gives away a whole lot more than you'd think. One of the most powerful shots in the entire 2-minute trailer is the moment when Superman saves a young girl from a fire-breathing monster that's terrorizing Metropolis. Now, we don't know much about this monster, but what we did notice is that the street sign beside the Man of Steel reads something that only eagle-eyed comic fans would spot as a reference. All this action occurs on the corner of Ross Street, which is probably a direct reference to longtime comic book artist Alex Ross. Ross's work, especially his Superman material, is some of the very best in the business, and we can't help but note his influence on James Gunn's Superman in particular. Ross was the visual mastermind behind the look of the 1996 DC miniseries Kingdom Come, a story about the nature of heroism in the DC universe and how vital Superman is to the next generation. In fact, David Corenswet's Superman shares his costume's S design with the Man of Steel from the alternate Kingdom Come universe, although the coloring is different. Gunn almost certainly made this creative choice as a nod to this famed comic book tale, and the Metropolis street sign appears to be another way to honor Ross's contributions to the greater DC mythos. In traditional Superman lore, Superman kept his secret identity as Clark Kent close to the chest. Nobody knew that the Man of Steel had taken on a human persona, and certainly not that of a mild-mannered, sometimes bumbling reporter from the Daily Planet.
I gotta admit, your disguise is nearly perfect. You had me fooled. And I am nobody's fool.
Of course, Clark Kent eventually revealed the truth to Lois Lane back in the 90s. Movies like Man of Steel and shows like Smallville and Superman and Lois would likewise clue Lois in on Superman's dual identity, and from what we can tell, James Gunn may be following suit. Throughout the Superman trailer, we see Clark and Lois interact on a number of occasions, most notably when Lois sits with a seemingly disheartened Superman as Metropolis gets attacked by a flying purple people blaster. At the end of the trailer, the pair soar in the air mid-kiss, and in another brief clip, Lois kisses a glasses-free Clark Kent. It sure looks like Gunn may be skipping the Superman-Lois Lane-Clark Kent love triangle that plagued so much of the Man of Steel's early appearances. One thing that no Superman movie has taken the time to explore much over the years is the culture and history of Metropolis itself. The city has a rich DC Comics history with plenty of establishments, traditions, and notable stories. From what we've seen of the first Superman teaser trailer, it appears that James Gunn is hoping to honor that. Twice in the trailer, we see nods to one, or perhaps both, of Metropolis's premier baseball teams. In the Ross Street scene, a banner for one of the city's ball teams, the Metropolis Meteors, is shown. Later on, Superman fights a superpowered villain at the Meteor Stadium. 2024's DC's Spring Breakout #1 highlights Superman's own love of the sport, and we hope that 2025 Superman will do the same. According to 1990's Atlas of the DC Universe, the Metropolis Meteors are the longest-running National League baseball team in the city, while the Metropolis Monarchs play in the American League. The dual Metropolis baseball franchises have made a splash elsewhere in Superman media as well. The Meteors are mentioned in passing in Superman and Lois, while the Monarchs have existed within the greater DC Extended Universe and the Young Justice animated series. Speaking of greater Metropolis lore, one change that longtime Superman buffs will notice in James Gunn's film is the shift from LexCorp to LuthorCorp. In most DC comic stories, Lex Luthor owns and operates his own multi-billion-dollar conglomerate, LexCorp. While LexCorp didn't show up in the mythos until the mid-1980s, it's become a long-established staple of Metropolis in most incarnations. LuthorCorp, on the other hand, was originally crafted specifically for the prequel series Smallville. Smallville first aired in 2001, and it followed the Man of Steel in his teenage years as he evolved into a hero. Michael Rosenbaum played Lex Luthor, a man who grew up in the shadow of his father, Lionel Luthor, and aimed to make LuthorCorp his own. By making the Luthor business a family affair, Smallville tackled themes of generational wealth and legacy in a way previous stories hadn't.
That I'm back, fully committed to LuthorCorp and to you.
And I'm delighted, to hear it.
While we don't know much about Nicholas Holt's Lex Luthor, we can only hope that the change from LexCorp to LuthorCorp will offer some unique narrative potential. And in case you didn't notice, another potential Superman antagonist, the Engineer, can be seen on top of the LuthorCorp building. If you look real closely, she appears to be stalking whoever is inside. Another DC Comics corporation that makes its way into the Superman trailer is Stagg Industries, and boy does that have loads of potential. Stagg Industries is named after Simon Stagg, a supervillain who made his first appearance in The Brave and the Bold number 57 back in 1965. While Stagg doesn't usually tussle with the Man of Steel, he maintains some pretty serious connections to another character set to appear in the film, Rex Mason, aka Metamorpho. In that issue of The Brave and the Bold, it's revealed that Stagg is directly responsible for Mason's transformation from man to monstrous hero after Mason falls in love with Stagg's daughter. Given that Metamorpho also appears in the trailer, it's possible that Superman arrives at Stagg Industries as a result of Mason's transformation. Either way, given that LuthorCorp seems to be heavily involved in the film, it's unlikely that both Luthor and Stagg will be major antagonists. However, the addition of Stagg Industries could open a door to the greater DC Universe franchise, not unlike how Man of Steel snuck in an Easter egg for Wayne Enterprises, leading to the greater DCEU. The teaser trailer makes it clear that the Man of Steel is never truly alone up in the Arctic. Aside from the inclusion of Krypto the Superdog, this time around Kal-El also has his very own robotic companion in the Fortress of Solitude, at least for a while. Now, because there have been a few different robotic butlers in Superman's comic book history, it's hard to pinpoint exactly which this character may be, but we have some ideas. Since James Gunn has previously revealed that Grant Morrison's All-Star Superman series was a major influence on Superman, one might assume that this robot is simply one of the many Superman robots that Superman uses to maintain the fortress and protect his identity. Even within the mainstream continuity, Superman had robotic companions to help him in his crusade, such as in the Silver Age story told in Action Comics number 282. Of course, this android could also be an adaptation of the House of L's Kryptonian servant Kellex, who first appeared in the rebooted The Man of Steel origin story by John Byrne. Previously, Kellex appeared in live action in 2013's Man of Steel and the CW series Supergirl. One tiny Easter egg that probably blew by even the most diehard of fans was the appearance of the war-torn nation of Boravia. If that name doesn't sound familiar, that's because the fictional DC Comics nation hasn't been featured in very many stories since the 1950s. As early as 1939's Superman number 2, Boravia appeared as a European nation that had fallen into a deadly civil war. With Superman's involvement, the nation eventually reunited, but only after the Man of Steel forced leaders from both sides to cooperate. After that, Boravia was featured in Black Hawk, which narrowed its location down to somewhere in the Alps. This wouldn't be the first time that Superman has engaged in international affairs on the big screen. In Superman 4, Christopher Reeve's Superman convinced the United Nations to give up all nuclear weapons. It's likely that Superman will step into another international conflict here, too. If there's one thing that makes Superman really Superman, it's the example set by his adoptive parents, Jonathan and Martha Kent, two Midwestern Kansas farmers who taught young Kal-El to seek truth and justice in all things. We only see Pa Kent in the teaser trailer during an emotionally vulnerable moment where he and Clark embrace sadly on a porch, which leaves us asking why. Could the Kents be losing the farm? Could Martha Kent have passed away? Perhaps the most obvious possibility is that Jonathan Kent himself is dying, and it wouldn't be the first time. In lots of Superman media, Pa Kent doesn't live to see his son put on the red cape. In Superman the movie, Pa Kent dies of a heart attack, just like he does on Smallville. In Man of Steel, Jonathan Kent made the controversial choice to stop his son from saving him and risk exposing his secret to the world. In this trailer, we could be seeing a flashback to some of Clark's last moments with his father, and we wouldn't be surprised if Gunn took this route. Considering that Richard Donner's Superman is among Gunn's favorite comic book movies, we wouldn't be surprised if this were the route his own film took.
Do you miss him?
Every day. But his spirit is always with us.
When we saw that first official look at this new Superman, the Man of Steel was seated while Metropolis was being attacked behind him. While most folks focused on Superman's outfit, other diehard comic fans noticed the giant glowing eye-like orb flying in the background. Many assumed that this was an interpretation of the DC Comics villain Solaris, and the new teaser only reinforces that idea. Solaris first appeared in 1998's DC 1,000,000 #1 by Grant Morrison, and is an artificial intelligent son. The character was also featured as an antagonist in Morrison's All-Star Superman. While we don't know why Superman wasn't rushing into battle against this strange force in the sky, we can only assume that the Man of Steel has his reasons. If the monster outside his window is actually Solaris, then it's possible that the living sun has sapped the Man of Tomorrow of his powers. Whatever this is, James Gunn's deep dive into DC Comics lore will probably pay off. One interesting complaint from some fans is that parts of the Superman teaser trailer look a bit too similar to 2023's major disappointment, The Flash. Although the movies couldn't appear to be more different in tone, we can see what people are talking about, especially when comparing Eddie Gathegi's Mr. Terrific battle scene against Michael Shannon's General Zod battle. Although The Flash wasn't a total box office failure, it's been widely considered one of the worst of the DCEU.
That's bad, isn't it? That's not good.
James Gunn praised the film at the time of its release, and the response to The Flash didn't keep him from hiring the same cinematographer, Henry Braham, to helm his Superman reboot. Braham and Gunn have worked together on a number of films, from Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 and Volume 3 to Gunn's first DC feature, The Suicide Squad, in 2021. Having been a part of Gunn's vision for the DC universe since the beginning, it makes sense that Braham would be included in Superman. Even if we hated The Flash and the loads of cameos throughout the film, it appears that Superman is off to a better start. The teaser introduces the Man of Steel in the middle of a crisis. He rockets to Earth and lands, bloody, injured, and curled up in a snowy crater. Fans don't know what knocked him down, but they did note that the shot looks a whole lot like the one when Yamcha gets killed in the Dragon Ball Z episode Cybermen Attack. The pose has become a meme over the past few years on the internet, but what might look like a small in-joke isn't the only thing that binds the Dragon Ball series to part of the Superman legacy. Dragon Ball and the Richard Donner series of Superman films actually have a long history together, if only in the annals of rumor. Fans have long wondered if the late Dragon Ball creator Akira Toriyama based Goku and his powers on Superman from those films. Since the two characters have origin stories that are somewhat similar, in which two superpowered beings rocket to Earth from a doomed alien race, it's no wonder audiences have speculated about the connection. Dragon Ball Super Broly offers the most recent depiction of Goku's backstory, a close match to Clark Kent's, with both raised by caring older humans after landing.
Oh, I know. I'll call you Goku.
Toriyama claims that he had different inspirations for Goku's origin story, but the striking similarities between the two characters have bound them together in pop culture history regardless. And now it looks like the characters are even more deeply connected than before.